Hello dear students, welcome. This is Joseline here. See, many a times it becomes difficult for us to judge whether an action is good or bad. What seems good to us may seem bad to others. What seems wrong to them what seems right to them may seem wrong to us. Alright, for example, there was a robber, a great bandit called Robin Hood. He lived in Nottingham Forest in England. He looted rich people and helped poor ones. Got the point? He looted rich people's house and he helped poor people. Got the point, dear students? So the poor people considered him as God. To poor people, he was of course a god. To them, his actions were correct, whereas the rich people and the law considered his actions as illegal. They were wrong, of course. See, the same action seems right to some category and seems wrong to other category. In the same way, all good actions cannot be called moral action. Are you able to catch what I am telling you? How it is difficult to judge, it becomes very difficult to judge an action as good or bad. In the same way, every good action cannot be called a moral action. Alright? For example, whenever you see a teacher, you wish them, right? Is wishing teacher a good habit, a good attitude? Definitely yes, it is a good attitude. But every good attitude action cannot be called a moral action. Consider the same example what I gave just now. Good action. Wishing a teacher is a good action. See, if you are wishing your teacher to please him or her or out of fear, then your wishing is definitely not a moral one. Got the point, dear students? Your wishing to please teacher or because of the fear is never a moral action. But if you consider that your growth, intellectual growth, your knowledge is because of your teachers, and then with this intention if you wish them, definitely your action becomes moral. So what I mean to say is, an action done to please others or an action done because it is a customary action. Customary, it is the duty of every student to wish the teacher. If you think in this way and wish a teacher, then definitely the actions are not considered moral. If you consider your teacher as your role models, if you give the credit of whatever knowledge you have, if you feel whatever knowledge you have, it is because of my teacher, because of the teachers only, then with this feeling, if we wish the teachers, definitely the actions become moral. Got the point? So this is a bit confusing. Got it? In today's lesson, one of the greatest leaders the world has ever seen, that is Mahatma Gandhi ji, describes some mandates to consider an action as moral or non-moral. Okay, so we are going to deal with a lesson titled What is Moral Action, written by M.K.Gandhi, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. And in this lesson, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi describes some mandates necessary to consider an action as moral or non-moral. We are not at all discussing here immoral actions. Immoral action is different concept. See, most of the actions we do every day are either moral or non-moral, but they are not immoral. Immoral means torturing someone, killing someone, thieving something. These are immoral actions. Okay, so in this lesson we are not going to discuss immoral actions. We are going to discuss whether the actions we think are good are moral or not. What we think good may be or may not be moral. So how to consider our actions to be moral is what we are going to discuss in today's lesson. Shall we start? What is moral action is the title of today's lesson. It is written by the great leader India has ever seen, Mahatma Gandhi. Shall we begin? Fine. When can it be said that a particular action is moral? In asking this question, the intention is not to contrast moral with immoral actions, but to consider many of our everyday actions against which nothing can be said from the conventional standpoint and which some regard as moral. See, most of us consider our everyday actions as moral. But Gandhiji says most of the everyday actions are not at all moral. See, I repeat. When can it be said that a particular action is moral? See, the lesson begins with a question. When can you say that your action is moral? That's what I told you. In this entire lesson, we are going to deal with the mandates necessary to consider an action as moral or non-moral. Okay, when can you say your action? See, and Gandhiji clears one thing here. In asking this question, the intention is not to contrast. Contrast means compare and show difference. Okay, contrast moral with immoral actions. I told you very clearly that in this entire lesson we are not going to contrast moral and immoral. We are just going to learn moral and non-moral actions. Okay, see, but to consider many of our everyday actions against which nothing can be said from conventional standpoint. Conventional means customary, adhering to customs. Okay, most of our actions are because of the prevailing customs. Okay, they're all influenced. For example, our parents tell us whenever you see elders, you wish them. Whenever you see teachers, you wish them. Because our parents tell us, we just keep doing. It's a practice. So they are called customary actions. And customary actions can never be called moral actions, but we regard them as moral. That is what Gandhiji says. Most of the everyday actions are just customary actions. They are influenced by customs, but we regard them as moral actions. But Gandhiji informs that they are not moral actions. Most of the actions are non-moral. You see, I'll continue. Most of our actions are probably non-moral. They do not necessarily involve morality. For the most part, we act according to the prevailing conventions. That is what I told you. Prevailing convention, existing traditions. Most of our actions are influenced by the existing traditions. We act according to tradition. We act because it's a practice. Got it? So, an action which is influenced by the existing tradition can never be called a moral action. They are just non-moral action. Of course, they are good actions. They are good actions, they are necessary, but they cannot be called moral actions. That is what Gandhiji makes clear. See, let's move on. Such conventional behavior is often necessary. If no such rules are observed, anarchy would be the result, and society's social intercourse would come to an end. Gandhiji says, conventional behavior, conventional attitude, conventional actions cannot be called moral, but they are necessary. So they are not moral, but they are necessary. Because if you don't follow this conventional behavior, definitely there will be disorder. Anarchy means an absence of government, disorder. There will be disorder everywhere. So Gandhiji says, if you want to, move on in the society, if you want to continue the society's social intercourse means communication between individuals, because we live in society, we live with the people. Got it? If you want to continue this intercourse, social intercourse, communication, then you need to follow some conventional behavior. Got the point, dear students? So conventional behavior, Gandhiji says, cannot be called moral, but they are necessary to maintain order, to maintain social intercourse. Alright, dear students, let's move on. Still, the mere observance of custom and usage cannot properly be called morality. That is what I have been trying to tell. Gandhiji very clearly tells that customary actions, the actions which are influenced by the existing customs, which we think moral, are not moral. They are all, most of the actions are all non-moral actions, because we consider them moral, but they are non-moral because we do because of an influence. We have been habituated to do some acts. So these habituated actions or practiced actions or conventional actions cannot be called moral actions, but they are necessary. Otherwise there will be anarchy, disorder everywhere, and society's social intercourse will come to an end. You cannot lead a proper life in society if you do not follow such conventional behavior. But Gandhiji says at the end of this part, he says, mere observance of conventional attitude or acts cannot be properly called moral action. Okay, influenced actions or customary actions cannot be called moral actions, but they are of course good actions. All good actions can never be called moral actions. Got the point, students? So in the very first paragraph, Gandhiji makes it very clear that influenced actions, the actions which we do because of practice, because of an influence, cannot be called moral action. They are just non-moral. Then when can an action be called moral action? We'll surely discuss them in the upcoming paragraphs. I'm going to end now. You please try to read the first paragraph again and again and try to understand the concept that customary actions are not moral actions. Stay tuned. I'll be back soon and continue the lesson. Please don't go out. Stay home. Stay safe. Take care. Bye. Have a nice time.